just want to take the opportunity to shift to the second session. Wadia?
Thank you everyone for this information provided for us. And I just want to highlight on a few points that the panelists shared with us and how sports been treated here in Qatar. So for when Rahman was talking about this protecting the bubble as players and athletes, I just would like to highlight on the efforts that was put by QFA and QSL providing and supporting all the league that happened, and yet we have the Champions League going here in Doha. Next to that, in any situation we have pro and cons, and now yet all the panelists were talking about the efforts that we are going to put, how we are going to continue on a business perspective, how can broadcasters evolve, and how can we engage, taking into consideration the fact that the majority of return of investments coming from broadcasters, yet business is important and generating income is important, but that's not the only thing. What will happen to stadiums if we all invest over there? So the feeling of being in a stadium, will it be different now? Should we shift from these big stadiums to like small terrain where like players are playing by themselves, surrounded by virtual cheering, as Rahman was mentioning? The psychic income, like the emotions generated when you are attending the stadium, when we are interacting with the player directly, will it be different? In order to know more about this and the impact of COVID and how we are going to bounce back after COVID, please welcome with me the next panel that it will be hosted by David Kushnan, the head of content, and welcome Matt Rogan, the co-founder of Two Circles, and May Ventura, the managing director, Middle East and North Africa, La Liga. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Dr. Wadia. Thank you, Vasco. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I hope you are all well, and welcome, as you were saying, to a really interesting hour that we've got for you about how the sports industry is rebuilding and generally resetting for this COVID-19 era. We're going to delve into this topic via two short presentations, and we will have the opportunity as a group to ask both of our experts some questions towards the end of the session. So if you do have a question at any point, maybe just write it in the chat and we'll pick that up a little bit later on. As mentioned, we're going to hear later on from Matt Rogan, the co-founder of Two Circles, the Two Circles agency, of course, leading data-driven sports marketing agency. But first, we are going to hear from Maita Ventura, Managing Director for the Middle East and North Africa region at La Liga, Spanish football's top league, of course. And Maita is with us to present the fascinating story of how La Liga returned to play earlier this year. So Maita, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, David. I would like to confirm that you are watching me and listening to me with no problems.
All good, loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen to show the presentation. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for this invitation to leaders and also to the Josoor Institute, which I had the pleasure of meeting exactly 1 year ago. What a year. 1 year after, one very complicated year after, it's again my pleasure to be here with you, speaking about how La Liga made it to return to the competition after or during COVID-19. So I think we can start now. One moment. Okay, perfect. So as you probably know, in Spain, football is something which is essential as a way of life, as a philosophy, as a culture. But it's important to say as well that the industry of professional football in Spain is essential for the Spanish economy as well. It represents the 1.37% of the Spanish GDP and around 180,000 jobs. So when the football stopped back in March, there was a huge challenge by all the key players to save an industry that have an impact on taxes of about 4 million euros. 4,000 million euros, sorry. So we created basically a campaign under the slogan of Back to Win that we will explain later, and which is a 4-phase strategy towards the restarting of the season that has been very successful, we can say it. The result was the return to action in early June, second only to the Bundesliga in Germany, which, as you know, is a country that was way less hit by COVID than Spain. But I mean, we managed to organize 110 matches in just 39 days. La Liga planned 500 trips to make it possible, these matches. Almost 40,000 tests, over 40,000 tests were carried out, not only for the players, but also for the clubs, staff, for the coaches, and for everyone involved in the matches. And the result was that we managed to finish successfully last season of La Liga Santander, and that we made it to begin on time for this current season of 2021. So we will explain it now how we did it and how did we get here actually. So the 23rd of May, the government of Spain announced the return to sports competitions. And the set date for the return of La Liga was officially set for the 11th of June, by the way, with the Andalusian derby between Sevilla and Betis. And the end date for the competition was set for the 19th of July. This meant that it was a very tight schedule, as you can see. All the clubs had 11 games left until the end of the competition that had to be disputed in just 6 weeks. So it was like 2 match days per week. That was a very great effort, not only for La Liga, but also for the clubs to develop and to make it possible. So it's very important to highlight here that the combined efforts with the European football community, not only UEFA, but also European leagues, has been essential to be able to return to the competition. As you know, there was an agreement to move the European competitions to August, and this was, of course, very, very important to be able to return to the competition, like La Liga, for example, in June and July. So for this time, at least, the European football stayed united, and everyone was keen on protecting the health of football. And I think this is something we can take out from as a positive way of this unfortunate year. There's been also some very interesting collaboration with other non-European leagues, such as, for example, leagues or institutions, such as, for example, the Qatar Football Association. We celebrated a workshop a few months ago just to share our expertise, our health protocol that we had designed, and also to understand how they were managing their return to the competition. And I think this is something very, very positive that it's important to highlight as well. So speaking about this health protocol, La Liga created one health protocol in collaboration with the health authorities in Spain, and also with the medical staff of the different clubs. And before La Liga started on the 11th of June, there was a strategy of 4 very defined phases that you can see here, and that we will be speaking about it now. It was, first of all, the preparation for training, in which everyone had to undergo different tests for COVID. Then it was the individual training. Stage number 3 was the collective training for groups up to 14 players. And finally, the collective training before La Liga started. So we cannot go into every detail of the health protocol, because actually it's a document of around 80 pages probably, but I will be more than happy to share it with you afterwards if someone is interested, no problem with that. But I will show you the document that we shared with the clubs, with the players, with all the staffs from the clubs, in order to explain perfectly and that everyone could be perfectly aware of what was expected from each of them at all of the stages of the strategy for the return. So in the stage number 1, that was the preparation for the return to training, it was obligated for everyone at the club, everyone attending the club facilities, to undergo a COVID test, at least one PCR and one antibody test, of course, for everyone. And there were only 5 positive cases. There were only 5 positive cases among the footballers for the first and the second division of La Liga. Of course, at this stage as well, there was a full disinfection and cleaning of the club facilities, following the guidelines from the health authorities, of course. Stage number 2, this started on the 8th of May. So basically, it was allowed a maximum of 6 people on every pitch training, with keeping double the safe distance from one player to another. There were only allowed to be 2 players at the gym, for example, and they were not allowed even to share the same ball. In this stage, the communication was key, because every night all the players were receiving on their laptops the task to be completed the next day, as well as the instructions on how and why and when they should access the stadium. Everyone had to access in their own car, always the same car, daily disinfected, and with specific times to access. Stage number 3, here the squad was divided into 3 groups of 10 people. Then this was extended up to 14 people. And these groups assigned were very important to be respected. This means that they were only allowed to go to the gym with the assigned group, or to go to the club canteen if they wanted to have something to eat with the assigned group. Same with the changing rooms and with a physiotherapist. There was one physiotherapist for every of the groups, for each of the 3 groups. And finally, stage number 4, which was the collective training session. Here, of course, this situation was very challenging, because at the end it was the closest one to the normal reality. So the most important thing here was to let everyone understand that we couldn't lower the guard. So it was really, really important to take extra care in terms of mask, gloves, all these safety measures, to not forget that we were again under the threat of this pandemic. Of course, in all of these stages that I'm summarizing a lot, because it's really regulated, even the tiny detail, it's regulated on the protocol. There are explanations of and recommendations on how you should behave at home, if you should go to shops, if you should wear long sleeves when you are going to the supermarket. Like, every tiny detail is very, very specified for the players. So this was the last stage before going back to the competition, and this was started on the 1st of June. So apart from these pre-phases for returning to the competition, there was something very important, of course, that is the stadium. At the end, the stadium is the central point of everything, is where the matches were going to be played, were going to be disputed. So as you know, the matches were behind closed doors and still are. The stadiums were divided into security zones that are independent from each other, so we can have a better control of the people that are going from one to another, and also to have a greater protection for the players. And also there's exclusivity for access by gates just for players and coaches. Everything is regulated in terms of the individual protection that they must wear. Benches were extended. Of course, no handshakes before the matches. The kits changed at halftime for sure. And as you know, the press conference started to be telematic. So this is just a bit of how we did it in terms of security and safety and logistically. Now it's important also to understand how we did it from a broadcasting point of view. Of course, we understood that we were under exceptional circumstances. And in the last 5 years, we have been working very hard to offer the best entertainment, the best football in the best way possible to all of our fans, not only to the ones that are going to the stadium that are no longer going, but also to the ones that are worldwide watching TV, watching La Liga on TV. So there's been two main innovations, we can say, that are the most important ones. First of all is the introduction of the virtualized stands and audio, and the new positions of the cameras. In terms of the virtual stands, that is, I would say, it's the biggest introduction after COVID in terms of broadcasting, has been possible thanks to the technology provided by different partners with which we have been working since this happened. And for example, the audio technology allowed us to hearing the celebration of a goal, even if there is no one at the stadium. We are working for the audio with EA Sports, who are providing the audio for this new development, new innovation that we are doing. And I mean, our objective here is to offer the best attractive way of showing the matches, even if there's no people at the stadium. And number two, we have changed some of the positions of the cameras, again, to adapt to the new reality. So for example, the aerial camera has modified its flight path, for example. The bench camera, it's now positioned on the opposite side, or because of healthy reasons, now there is one robotic camera into the tunnel with the players because of obvious healthy reasons. Also, in terms of marketing, we wanted to make sure that everyone in the world knew that La Liga was back. We chose this slogan, back to win, because we wanted to let everyone know that we were returning, and that we were returning to fight back this common enemy, common opponent that we all had. So we were developing a worldwide campaign with the digital influencers doing like esports championships, private viewings, live commentary shows, many different activations. Just as an example, I would like to show you one which is called Applause to Infinity, that we created to pay a tribute or to create a monument in the stadium to all these groups in the society, like doctors, nurses, pharmacists, that have been working harder than usual to protect the rest of the society, and that we consider they deserve this tribute. I'm gonna play it. Let me know if there's any problem with the audio or with the image, and I will stop.
Great moments are born from great opportunity, and that's what we have before us today. We're the greatest team in the world, and we're playing the biggest match of our lives. We never expected such a small opponent to cause us so much suffering. And yet, even though we're apart, we remain very much together. The first half has been tough, but we never gave up, and we kept our morale high. Now La Liga Santander is back, and the stadiums need your applause more than ever, because we're going to build a monument to our fight back, applauding in the 20th minute of every La Liga Santander and La Liga Smartbank match from now on. This cannot be an end. It must be a beginning, because now we are stronger and more united. We are the greatest team in the world. Visit applause-to-infinity.com and make your applause heard in the 20th minute in the stadiums.
So basically, all the fans have the options to go to this website and record their applause and upload it. And in every match days, in the 20th minute, you actually could hear the applause to infinity. And by the way, this 20th minute, it's because in Spain during the pandemic that hit really hard, especially Spain on the first wave. Every day at 8 p.m. everyone has this tradition of going to the window to offer this applause to the hospitals, to the nurses, doctors, and pharmacists, and these people in the society that were working for the rest of the society, actually. And last but not least, we developed almost 100 actions worldwide with digital campaigns, as I was saying, and many different activations. Like, for example, the United Streets of La Liga, in which we produced different pieces of urban artwork in different cities of the world, like Mexico or Hong Kong or Istanbul and many others. For example, we did in Spain in different cities, only in Madrid and in Sevilla. We decorated the streets with the different t-shirts of the clubs of La Liga Santander and La Liga Smart Bank, with the slogan of "Back to Win" on the back. And we also projected different images on the fans on different iconic buildings in Spain, such as San Mamés Stadium in Bilbao or La Puerta del Sol in Madrid. And it was really, really nice, actually. So this is just a summary, as I was saying, of how we did it to return. I think we will have some time later on for questions, right, David? So I will be more than happy to answer them.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Maite. Fascinating presentation, and congratulations to you and the team at La Liga for getting back into action as soon as you possibly could. It was a terrific success.
Thank you.
So we will, questions to come later for Maite. As mentioned, if you have any, please post them in the chat and we'll come to those a little bit later. For our next presentation, though, on this same subject, we're going to hand over to Matt Rogan, co-founder of the Two Circles agency, and Matt's going to talk through some of the key trends to look out for in 2022. Big year, of course, and beyond, including the fusion of digital and physical, the importance of social purpose, and much more besides. So Matt, good morning, and over to you.
Good morning, and thank you everyone for having me this morning. I'll move straight on and try and master the technology to start off with, if that's okay. So, well, let's kick off with a quick introduction. As David said, what we're going to talk about, move up just the one to start with. There we go. So what we're going to look at today is some things that I think it's worth us all being aware of, because my point of view is that we're going to be bouncing back into a slightly different world in 2022 to the one we exist in today. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a sense of how I think things are going to be different when our clubs, our teams, our league, our World Cups look a little bit more like what John Barnes was talking about earlier on, the world that we're used to. But we've got a little bit of work to go before we do that, of course. To start off with, a little bit of background on me. So I spent my career building and growing businesses in the sports and entertainment space. Had some time at the NBA and MTV, and as David mentioned, co-founded a business called Two Circles that I stepped away from this year. At the time, it was representing the 6 biggest rights holders in the world. Actually, it was an amazing journey from my kitchen table to the Wall Street Journal, as you can see here. And I now spend a lot of my time thinking and talking about leadership in general in the sports space, including the Harvard Business Review, and also do some writing on what I think that our world is going to look like next. And it's that I want to talk a little bit about today. And the truth is, everyone I've talked to in the sports space has found the world in 2022 to feel a little bit like this. We know 2021 is going to be tough. We know we've got some fantastic work, like the work you just heard about from La Liga, getting us back as close to normal as quickly as possible. And yet 2021 is still going to be a bit of a pass-through zone. And it's quite hard to have the time to think about what 2022 might look like. So if I am getting my organization back to normal, is normal going to be the same? And that's where I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about today, because I think there will be some changes. A lot of shifts going on in our world right now, including outside the sports space, that I think are going to be really relevant for us as we look to come back. And so the first of those is a complete fusion, as David mentioned, of our digital and physical worlds. And it's not that unusual, really, is it, to talk about we as sports entities need to be aware of the progress of digital and think about our digital platforms. I'm not going to talk about that at all. I'm going to flip things around the other way and say, if digital and physical are fusing together completely, then that also has implications for our digital platforms. And I thought I might bring that alive by showing you two things that are on my family's Christmas list. So the thing on the left is it's called a U2s. It's a physical model of a YouTube influencer. A gentleman called KSI, who was an influencer, become a boxer. And this is on my son's Christmas list. So being 13 and a half, he spends a lot of time on YouTube rather than conventional, traditional television. And yet his digital influencers he spends a lot of time with, he wants represented in physical form in his bedroom. And I thought that was quite strange, really. And you know, I'd sort of assumed that everything was just to go digital. And then I thought about my own behavior. I love my music. I've spent best part of 20 years digitizing my music collection, and despite that, for Christmas I've asked for a vinyl record player, because there's something visceral and physical in the experience of music that I feel like I've lost somehow by going entirely digital. Now, if we play this into the sports space and this sort of inability or lack of desire to go purely digital, I think what will that mean for sports properties come 2022? And here's an example from an organisation I've got an awful lot of respect for, an organisation called the Drone Racing League, which is a relatively recent property in North America. And what I think is particularly interesting about their business model is the way that they fuse both physical and digital into one asset. So they start off by attracting people into the sport with a science and engineering course they run for schools across America, teaching kids to build drones, a very physical activity, to build drones and learn to fly drones in the classroom. And from that, if kids enjoy it, then there's a chance to play on Twitch and through Xbox, and there's a chance to play an electronic game where I can become a drone pilot in the digital sphere. And then, very sensibly, they sift the kids playing these drones around the world, and they look for the very best ones, and they invite them to compete at the elite level. And they could, of course, run that elite competition in an entirely digital arena on the game, but they choose to run it in a physical environment because they think that gives something to the proposition. So the photo you see here is in a warehouse in Germany where they held the World Championships, and it's a physical, real event. And then what they choose to do, of course, is they distribute that content around the world in the digital environment. So if you just come back there, you've got a physical start in schools, which goes to a digital participation platform through which they sift the best to a physical event at the elite level, and then push that out digitally. And that morphing between the digital and physical is going to become increasingly prevalent, I believe, in the way in which we all have to think about our sports entities going forward into this slightly strange new world of 2022 and beyond. So that's the first thing. And of course, if you're interplaying between the physical and the digital, What that means, and reading clues in both environments, what that means is you have to be incredibly agile in the way in which you think through our business model. Now, I've been in sports for about 25 years, and the truth is, it's only really very recently our business models have started to change at all in reality. And I'm particularly interested in this interplay, but again, between the digital and the physical spaces and the way in which we can use clues from both environments. So above here, image at the top, is from the NBA's League Pass OTT product, I'm sure many of you might subscribe to or might at least have heard of. And there's one thing in particular I draw your attention to here, which is not only that I can choose to watch one team, my team, I'm a Celtics fan, watch the Celtics through the year, or choose to watch all teams, but also that as a viewer, I can choose to take all the commercials out and pay a premium for that. Okay, so the NBA are offering me a chance to have a different experience with less commercials involved. I just pay a premium for that. And what's fascinating for that is that's the beginnings of something we're going to see from 2022 and way beyond, which is a personal experience of the sport I'm consuming, mixing up and down, using digital tools, my own experience based on my preferences. And that personal experience of content is going to be fundamental to the way in which sports next generation happens. So that's one piece. The second thing though, here's a digital asset, but if you look at the quote from Adam Silver, the commissioner below, he says in particular the bottom post, based in large part on the data we gathered from how people consume games on our digital platform, we changed the physical format of the game. Okay, so they're reading the digital clues and they took out some timeouts towards the end of the game and at points where they realized people were switching out and less engaged by the content. And having this direct link into fans' homes enabled them to read that information in real time in a way that they couldn't if they were just distributing their content to NBC or whoever else. So that's the digital world influencing the physical game as presented to fans in stadia. There's also an example here, though, of the physical world influencing a principally digital property. So Amazon in North America and elsewise are starting to test physical stores in terms of grocery stores. And that's not only because they're interested in different channels of distribution, it's also because it gives, in a way that the digital channel of League Pass gave the NBA physical cues, it's the physical channels of Amazon helping them observe and notice how customers behave in retail environments. They can take that learning and then put that back into their digital property, which of course is what's driving all their margin. There's a quote there I love from the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, saying, "Every time we win a Golden Globe, we sell more shoes." And what he means by that is every time that they win awards for the quality of their content sitting on their Prime Video, they know that retains people as Prime Video customers, and they know if they remain as Prime customers, then they'll continue to purchase on the rest of the Amazon platform. So understanding your business model, the digital and the physical, fusing that together and making conscious decisions around it is going to be absolutely fundamental in this brave new world that we're finding ourselves operating in. Okay, so the third one is probably the most complex, so bear with me on this morning, and it's about managing the numbers. So we've talked a lot about trends going on in a broader environment, and there's one other set of trends that the sport industry can no longer stay away from. Two circles set up in the double dip recession in 2011 at my kitchen table, as I mentioned, and the truth was, even then, sport could operate slightly outside of any of the broader macroeconomic trends that any of us were noticing. That said, The Economist published a couple of weeks ago a survey of all crowd-related businesses in the world, so music, theatre, entertainment, arts, and of course sport. And they estimated that the market capitalization of all of those had almost halved in the course of the last year. And what that means is we can't exist in isolation of any of the broader macroeconomic trends at the moment. They are going to influence us heavily through the next 2 to 3 years. And so if we're going to operate in this industry now, we have to understand the way that's likely to change the way we do business. it's quite a busy slide. If you start on the left-hand side of that, that's what's going on in the macroeconomic world today. So inflation and interest rates are low. Okay, and the reason for that is because as a result of COVID, there were either a lot of redundancies and layoffs around the world, in particular in Western Europe, and so there's a lot of spare capacity in the system. So if we need to make more things, we need to build more websites, we need to make more products, there's capacity in the system to do it. And so inflation will stay low, and interest rates, in likelihood, which tends to follow inflation, will also stay low, because if you need more something, you can just build it. You don't need to increase the price of what already exists. We've seen quite an anti-globalization lobby latterly, even with Trump not being elected. There's no doubt there's an anti-globalization lobby going on in our world right now that, you know, I'm seeing it in England as we're still trying to negotiate our exit from the European Union. So we've got that to cope with. We have, as a result of a lot of economies struggling, we have more government intervention, in particular in sport in Western Europe, for example. And what that means is that check that the government puts into sport tends to come with some commitments from sport back to government. And there's just less money in our system right now. So retail spending, consumer spending in a lot of places around the world is significantly down. And ultimately that means that creates margin pressures for all of us in the running of businesses. So that's where we stand today. And if you move towards the right-hand side, here's what I think is going to happen going forward. So going forward, ultimately, as things begin to pick up, brilliant work by the likes of Mitre and La Liga start to pull us back, our industry back to normal, and we see that across more and more industries. Slowly we'll start to see interest rates pick up again, and inflation will drive that. As we get to a more normalized view of worldwide collaboration, anti-globalization will continue, but not to anywhere near the extent we're seeing today. And I think we'll see a more balanced picture from 2022 going forward. Government intervention, however, as economies struggle to get back to normal over the next 4 to 5 years, will continue to be high. We need to be cognizant of that, and that will put some pressure on our margins. And you're probably sat here saying, that's great, but it's quite early in the morning still, and what does any of that actually mean? Because these are the things on the right hand side that are so as a business that recently took finance in 2 circles, acutely aware of managing the amount of debt we brought into our business and the interest rates we might have to pay going forward to that. That's a really important point, I think, with the amount of external capital coming into sport, being really aware of not signing ourselves up to too much debt. Being really aware that if we fix deals for 5 years in whatever walks of life we lead, then inflation might really start to challenge some of the prices we charge. So try to think about how we isolate our businesses within that. Try to think as well about how we keep some of the efficiencies that we've generated in our businesses. Does every conference need to be face-to-face when we come back to this brave new world? Or can we continue to operate with efficiency in some spaces? I spoke to my doctor yesterday and she was telling me she thinks as a result of the pandemic, about 75% of consultations with doctors are going to continue on Zoom and on the phone. So if even the medical industry is changing very quickly, what's the sports equivalent? We need to think about efficiencies because there's going to be a lot of pressures on our operating models going forward. The one thing I think in Western Europe hasn't been thought through at all anymore is about this kind of anti-globalization environment and what that's going to mean for our supply chain. So I bring a book out in the middle of next year, and my publisher is already scared about not being able to create print books elsewhere in the country or elsewhere in Europe and bring them back into England. It's going to be a real challenge because of the challenges of Brexit. So for whichever walk of life we're in and whichever country we live in, I think these are things we all need to start thinking through now if we're running businesses in a way we really didn't have to do previously. And the final piece of the jigsaw is almost deliberately and slightly obtusely put at the end, that's purpose. And in one level, the broader search for societal purpose and the role of sport in driving community and social cohesion, it is absolutely not the last, it's the first and the biggest trend we're seeing, I think, coming through COVID. And I'm not going to talk today about any of the broader social causes that we've all seen deservedly develop and generate more traction through the course of the summer. Beyond to say that I think sports' role as a political entity is only going to increase going forward, because it remains one of the few rituals that can pull us together in informal conversation. What I'm going to talk about is what you see on the right-hand side, and this is the English version of M&Ms. So these are called Smarties, and you see these in England quite a lot. And I use this to represent, we use these heavily in Two Circles, not because we're all diabetic and addicted to sugar, but because this is the way that we vote in Two Circles. So we have a very heavily influenced, the bottom end, young end of millennials, Generation Z workforce. The average age of the workforce today is 29. So by 2022, we'll be about 31. And as power passes to those generations, they expect to have a view in the way things are done. They expect the organisation structures of sports businesses to be flat, and for them to their point of view to be taken iteration. So when we have big decisions that need making at Two Circles, we reach for the Smarties. And what we do is we create cycling drinks bottles that are clear, so you can see inside them. And we'll use them for tests like, which country should we expand into next? And our management team will provide strong advice. All right, whether we should go to Germany, should we go to France, should we go to Holland, should we put an office in Qatar? And we'll give strong arguments and thoughts to each of our employees, and then we give them a tube of Smarties and say, okay, what do you think? So those Smarties you're not going to eat, you can vote for the countries that you think we should consider in more detail and do more detailed research on. And that process of engaging a millennial Generation Z workforce is fundamental to the way in which sports are going to change. Not only because those people are going to become increasingly influential. In fact, millennials will be the largest workforce in any sports entity by 2022, and larger than, in some ways, in some sports, larger than the rest of the generations combined, but because they're an extremely talented, digitally native workforce who will be far better than my generation at putting these business models together that morph digital and physical. So one of the other things that happened at Two Circles was we got rid of rules to address that millennial workforce, and we think we're going to see a lot more of this in 2022. Sport traditionally was very top-down, very traditional management style. In Two Circles, we got rid of all of this, and we said, okay, we have a very talented workforce. We trust you. You make the rules. You tell us what culture we're trying to create in this new millennial workforce. And instead of rules, our team built these. So really, just a set of sort of cultural statements that against which we could set the way in which we wanted Two Circles to be run. And I've emphasized some in purple here that I just think are particularly pertinent to a millennial Generation Z in particular workforce that is the workforce that's now going to be leading our organizations. You get out what you put in, number 10. So we're not going to set you firm career trajectories. It's yours to make and ours to work with you to support you wherever you want to go. 90% of the best ideas will come from the people that are closest to the fans and closest to the customers. So not only is it our responsibility as management to listen to you, it's your responsibility to come up with those ideas. Nobody is the finished object. I started my university career working a word processor. There weren't laptops. I'm still teaching myself digital. Federer practices first serve still. We're not the finished object, and if we're going to manage through this pivot, we all need to keep learning and developing. And my favorite is probably number 2. So the photocopy is broken because you haven't mended it yet. Sport is changing. Nobody has a divine right to be the leader sat in their beautiful office and expect it all to happen for them. We all have to be in this together, all of us as an industry, let alone as one business, as we navigate these changes to 2022. And so in summary, I think for me, the post-COVID world is hugely exciting. It is going to be very complex for us as a set of, as an industry to get through, but there's also significant opportunity. So to the left-hand side of this 2x2 matrix, there's greater complexity because our business models are going to be more complex. we're going to have to understand how to morph the digital and the physical for these new generations in ways that, frankly, are going to bend all of our minds. The internal challenge that comes with that at the bottom is we're also going to be subject to economic pressures we've never had to learn to deal with before as leaders and managers. At the same time, if there are complexities that we're going to have to get our heads around in 2022 and beyond, there's also massive opportunities. Finally, we are talking directly to fans rather than going through sponsors and third-party broadcasters, and that gives us all sorts of clues as to how they are currently passionate about our sport and how we can change our sports to be particularly compelling to future generations. And we also have a significant opportunity in the way we run our business just to take some of the laws out and think about the cultures we create to unleash a workforce who actually grew up with this stuff, when sadly I'm far too old to have done. So that's my sense of the post-COVID world. Like we heard a little bit from Maita in the short term, it's a world of complexity, but also there are some significant opportunities for the way we go forward. And back to you, David.
Thank you very much, Matt. Fascinating stuff. We've got Maita back with us again as well, and we've got around about 10 minutes or so for a few questions. So if you have a question or a thought, just pop it in the chat and we will get to it straight away. Matt, just coming back to what you were saying at the end there, one of the big challenges, the big leadership challenges, is likely to be balancing up the very critical short-term decisions that are having to be made, especially in something like a global pandemic, with the long-term strategic decisions, which are always critical for the growth of a business. What's your advice? What's your sense of how the sports industry is able to handle that particular challenge?
So, I think it's being very clear which hat you're wearing at any one time. So I talked to, in doing some writing recently, I talked to the chief execs of a couple of other businesses, so businesses not in sport, in retail, and they said, well, it's easy. We just have a team of 5 people and we have them focused on the short-term decision making, and then we have another 10 people and they're focused on the long-term plan. And we don't have that luxury in sport, of course. So I think what we need to do is think about carving out maybe even a day a week or amount of time where we say, right, let's think about the future. Let's think about the long-term business plan and just try and take our heads out of the firefighting for a moment. Maybe it's later in our working weeks to say, let's try and take our heads out of where is our world going? How do we think our business plan needs to change? And how do we change our team structures and everything else to address to where the market's going? Firefighting in the short term, I think is all about finance, actually, because it's all about creating the financial breathing room. If you can create the financial breathing room, then that enables you and gives you permission to think about the longer term. But financial breathing room ultimately means, can we see our way to sustainable revenue? So our fans feel like we're looking after them even though there's no revenue there. Do our sponsors feel looked after and will continue to commit to us even if there's no short-term value we can provide to them, or less short-term value? And how are we mitigating broadcast rights challenges even if our sports are behind closed doors? If you can get those bits right and manage your cost base to get some breathing room, then spend a day a week thinking about the longer term.
Maita, how are you at La Liga finding that short-term, long-term management balance?
Well, I think that's the key of everything. I think since all this situation started, in the case of La Liga, and specifically speaking about the return to the competition, it's been complicated to work because of the uncertainty that it's very important that we all start to learn how to manage it now more than ever. Especially because we don't know, and I really liked Matt's presentation. I don't think we can set a date for this to end or to back to normal, because definitely it will be a new normal. So I think we are trying to manage according with the evolution of the pandemic, with the regulations of the government of Spain, with the differences between the different regions in Spain. That of course it's complicated to manage everything. But right now we have to work in both terms. I mean, short term with the latest things, and long term because at the end we have to keep building one strategy for the creation of this product that we have in La Liga, actually.
You took us through some of the short-term decisions that you'd made in your fantastic presentation earlier. Which one element of that do you think La Liga found most challenging, most difficult?
Well, I think the $1 million question, I would say it's, and I'm surprised that no one asked it yet, it's when the people will be able to come back to the stadium, which is like the hot topic. And of course, for example, this is a decision that it has to be made according to what is going on week by week. The government, not only the government of Spain, but the government of each of the regions in Spain are giving news every 2 weeks. So we are continuously adapting to it. Actually, when we designed the health protocol to return to the competition, we started to do it in March. Like we started working on different scenarios, taking into consideration that, for example, this could go back end of April, mid of May, or end of June. So we had different scenarios, and I think this is the way in which it's more easy to destroy this level of uncertainty that we are working with.
An excellent audience question here that has come in on the chat. Based on what you've learned over the past few months, what's an example of one new thing that will stay beyond the pandemic, and what's an example of one thing that won't change? So, Matt, I'm going to come to you first with that. What's something new that we've seen that you think will stay beyond the pandemic, and then maybe we'll ask Maita about something that maybe won't change.
So one new thing that I think will stay, I'll go for one internal, one external. One new thing that I think will stay internally is disparate workforces. So I think we'll see, I live just outside London, and I notice how many people are telling me, when the pandemic has left, that they'll still look to divvy their time out between working at home and commuting in. External thing that I think will change is I've been of the view for the last 10 years that sponsorship is quite lazy, and actually I think it's been fantastic for sports to think more creatively about the value they can provide to brands by taking away advertising hoardings and taking away logos on shirts for a while, and maybe taking away some broadcast exposure. So actually it's caused a conversation between the rights holder that says, actually, what's the real value that we bring to you as a brand? How can we think creatively about providing value when the obvious stuff's taken away? There is no hospitality, say, and created a real conversation with the brand. Say, okay, well, what are we really looking for in the connection you give to our audience? So I think sponsorship will really benefit in the long term from this short-term hiatus of traditional logo exposure.
Maita?
Yeah, okay, I think from my side, something that will not change is that we will need to keep adapting ourselves to offer the best product. I mean, from the sport property, we cannot give it for granted that people love football, that people are passionate about football, and that will consume your product no matter what. Apart from football, from having the best players and the best teams or whatever, you need to understand that no matter what, you need to be always adapting and evolving and have the best product ever. So in this case, it's not enough with having the best matches, but also to offering in the same way. So in the case of La Liga, we are introducing broadcasting innovations. We are offering a very good image, attractive matches, because it's not only people will not be following football forever. I don't think so. And the other thing that will change is, I think it will be the way in which we activate sponsorships, and of course, but also the way in which we understand partnerships and sponsorships, because at the end it's not anymore that you associate your image with someone's image and that's all. I think with this what has happened with COVID, I think there's been some things that have been demonstrated that you can adapt. I mean, I think I'm a bit confused. I mean, I'm not explaining myself very well, but I think we have demonstrated that there are other ways to activate apart from the traditional ones. So I think this is a lesson that we have learned, and it's a lesson that we can show our sponsors that there's more to explore than the things that we have been doing for the latest years.
Question from Liwa Hariz for you, Maite, around the gradual return of fans to stadiums, which is obviously something that's happening in certain parts of England with the Premier League and other countries in Europe and around the world. What's the situation in Spain, and what's La Liga's plan to deal with that gradual return of fans?
So, I mean, it's not our decision to go back to the stadiums, because otherwise, I mean, we are really looking forward to being able to go back to the stadiums, of course, under the safety and security protocols that are put in place. But we depend, of course, on the evolution of the pandemic, on the vaccine, on the instructions from the health authorities, on many different things. I am now reading Lana's question about how will we keep fans excited to return to the stadium, and I think the excitement comes because they cannot go. So I think they are more excited than ever to be able to return. And even though there's been some dates, like I mentioned, about the possibility, we really don't know. We don't know how it will be, if there will be a reduced group that will be able to go, or if in some regions will be sooner than in others. We don't know yet exactly how the situation will be.
Comes back to what Matt was saying about agility, I guess, and being able to take decisions at short notice. We're nearly out of time. One more question. Oh, Matt, go on.
No, all I was going to say was that piece around agility is so linked to having flat organizational structures and empowering your team to make decisions, because you can't react quickly, and you can't notice things and make changes quickly. If you're in a massive traditional kind of 1,000 person hierarchical business, you have to empower your team who are closest to what's going on to make decisions quickly, and accept you might make some mistakes, but that's the world we're in now.
Final question for you both, very quickly. How optimistic or pessimistic are you about the future of the sports industry as we sit here today?
Should I start, or?
Yes, Maite, why don't you start?
Okay, sorry, Matt. I feel optimistic. I mean, it's been very hard times, but we just need to adapt to the new reality. And I think we will have to understand that maybe the way in which we consume sports, or even practicing sports, of course, but the way in which we consume sports may change a bit. But of course, the impact has been very negative during these years. But I think once this is, I don't want to say it, but over or improve the situation, we will be all more reinforced for future crises to come. And I think we all have to be optimistic about the hard work that we have been all doing in the sports properties. So I think the results will come, and I think we just need adaptation for the future.
I 100% agree with that. I think I'm also optimistic. I think 2021 will be difficult, but I think we'll emerge with a sports industry that understands its business model better, that understands how it relates to society better, that have athletes that understand they have a social responsibility and understand how to make that count, that understands that it can't exist in an economic bubble, irrespective of what's going on in the broader social landscape, or even in the broader landscape of brands or broadcasters. So I think we might be a little smaller, but I think we'll be far more sustainable for the long term as a result. And hopefully sport and exercise will be the thing that keeps us all healthy when this pandemic's hopefully slightly further into the background.
Matt Rogan, Mighty Ventura, thank you so much for your time. Pleasure to spend some time with you today. And from me, David Cushnan, I will hand it back to Vasco and Dr. Wadia.
I would like to thank you all for the information you provided. We have to be optimistic for the future. Hopefully everything will resolve soon. HIWAR will take a small pause and we'll get back to you in the afternoon.
I'd like to also thank David and all the panelists. And this session was run by leaders in sport who have been a supporter for Josoor Institute over the many years in terms of helping us on all sorts of content development and any exhibitions which were coming up between the past decade or so. So thank you for that.